seconds. The Artemis 1 core stage is completed. It's shipped to NASA's Stennis Space Center for green run testing. Meanwhile, Artemis 2 and 3 are currently in work. From core stage 1 to core stage 2, you'll see a big improvement in our overall production rate. We've adjusted how we perform our tank rotation, and we've improved our overall mold process by adding new thermal protection tools. The SLS core stage for Artemis 1 is a brand new first-time build. Its design concept will be used for every Artemis mission. Capturing the lessons learned ensures that we have high quality, high performance, and safety for all of us.
Today, we push forward to the moon. Tomorrow, we leap to greater heights and new destinations. There is history to be made. In Mission Control, we eagerly anticipate the first transmissions from unexplored worlds. Giant leaps start here.
Hey, the Earth is down here. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I get back and do some more things. And I had another rest period. So this time I took 1 foot out and did a little agility.
Became the hero that this country needed.
America's initial and successfully crewed space missions, known as Project Mercury, were followed by Project Gemini, the proving ground that would lead to the Apollo missions and the landing on the moon.
It's humans out there. It's humans
on the Soviet
out here.
side, cosmonauts and engineers were doing similar work to extend spaceflight duration, improve rendezvous techniques, and to develop the capability to land the spacecraft.
Then you sort of poke your head out, flip around, and you take a look around, and you know, it's really a holy moly kind of moment.
That was when I first learned, I think,
in order for us to conquer the space,
being in space,
we need to learn how to operate outside of the space.
It's truly a magical experience.
The first successful egress from the spacecraft while in orbit was achieved by cosmonaut Alexei Leonov.
but very rewarding work.
NASA's astronauts making him the personal part to complete suit up for modern spacewalks with training and experience.
And
humans suited up, leaving the vehicle and going
I
out
saw
on spacewalks,
just half of the world.
exploring, going beyond, and always going into a situation we've never been to before, fix something, at a space station, to deploy an experiment, or longer term,
up until now,
I think of spacewalking on Mars. So it's been a lot of time thinking about how humans are going to explore Mars, suited with some pretty new, cool technology.
When floating out in the void of space,
he had basically, as best I understand it,
making new discoveries by building a prestigious legacy.
After he got out of an airlock, and he was literally out there in a vacuum of space.
Why did the Russians
and once he got through that tunnel, his job was to turn around and get back in. And had a great deal of difficulty getting back in because he had to turn around in that tunnel with a pressurized spacesuit at that time, even for us.
One of the things that drove us into human space flight was fear.
Being inhibited by
when Sputnik went over here in 1957 and people began to realize that there was another nation in the world that had the capability of putting something into space that could actually pass over the United States. That's not a good way to do a sustainable program, is through fear.
Clearly our motivation was a race, was to beat the Soviets, and we had to do that for international prestige. And so that set us on a sprint to the moon. We will get to the moon within the decade, and we did. But it didn't set us up for a long-term exploration program in space.
A dramatic exit from the Gemini spacecraft in what would be America's first spacewalk.
When the country was awash
on June 3rd, 1965,
in campus and civil strife, beginning of a very unpopular war.
Into space.
The Soviets literally owned space at that point in time. Yuri Gagarin back in early 1961 made one orbit around the Earth. Alan Shepard
becoming the first American astronaut
became
to complete
the hero that this country needed.
America's initial and successfully crewed space missions, known as Project Mercury, were followed by Project Gemini, the proving ground that would lead to the Apollo missions and the landing on the moon. On the Soviet side, cosmonauts and engineers were doing similar work to extend spaceflight duration, improve rendezvous techniques, and to develop the capability to leave the spacecraft.
any
what was
better
dubbed by NASA as an extravehicular activity, or
it was space euphoria, I think, from everyone from
in order for us
Ed
to
and Jim
conquer
McDivitt to everyone on the ground, and mission
we need
control
to
everyone.
learn
It
how
was
to operate
spectacular.
outside
He had a little
of the
gun, he
space
could control his body, he could move where he
The
wanted
first
to go.
successful egress from a spacecraft
set us
while in
up.
orbit was achieved by cosmonaut Alexei Leonov. Program continued on March 18 and extend PDA procedures, making him the first person to complete tethered spacewalks in space orbit.
And what I
you
saw,
know the difficulties that we
and I
had in
saw
the Gemini
just half of
program
the
doing
world,
spacewalks because
we
the
were
state of the art,
500
the state
kilometers
of the art needs
above
to
the
improve.
Earth.
But you saw the difficulties there.
Nobody,
when you jump
even
out and you
up
try to
until
get
now,
something
nobody's
done.
flying
well,
that
you haven't
high.
practiced in the free fall
Alexei's,
zero G condition. And so it's Newton's second law.
task
You push in
was to
something
get
that
out and
moves your
get back
body
in.
instead of getting the work done. And
And
so
he had,
that whole
as
week
best
grew
I understand it,
essentially enough, and
a
Gemini on.
tunnel.
Americans like Gene Cernan,
After he
Michael
got out of an
Collins,
airlock, and he
Richard
was
Gordon,
literally out there in a
and Buzz
vacuum of
Aldrin
space.
continued the competition
And,
with the Soviets.
And once he
In the
got
Gemini
through that
days,
tunnel,
when they were
his
trying
job
to do
was
the
to
first spacewalks
turn around
from
and
a capsule.
get back in.
The
And had a
first
great
EVA,
deal of
first
difficulty
spacewalks were
getting
not
back in
very
because he had to
productive.
turn around.
The crew
in that
members got
tunnel with
outside, they didn't have anything to hold on
a
to,
pressurized
kind of
space
flailed
suit.
around.
At that time,
They
even
couldn't
for
do
us,
a fairly simple task.
was like
And
being
they learned
inhibited
from
by
that they had to
a
have
suit
a
of
better
plaster
way to
Paris.
train,
It was hard to move anything.
and they started to use
And
water
he
tanks
literally
at
had
that
to
time.
deflate
Every
his spaceship at that point in time to be able
EVA had different
to
little
reduce the size to get back in.
frustration.
Later that year, Gemini 4 stood ready to launch from Cape Canaveral, Florida, with next came the objective of gathering the results of an extended 4-day mission on both land and space on the surface of the moon. Gemini 4's original semi-conservative mission was then expanded to include, amongst other things, a dramatic exit from the Gemini spacecraft in what would be America's first
pretty much
spacewalk.
compare it to what the launch entry suit was
On
like.
June 3rd,
it was
1965, the
not
second
custom
crewed mission of the
made,
Gemini series carried
but
James
you could,
McDivitt
the
and
link
Edward
net
White
stuff
into
could be
space.
configured
At
so that you
2:46
did
p.m.
have a
Eastern
certain
Time,
mobility in the
using a
arms
handheld gas
and at the
White
knees.
stepped out of his spacecraft,
The difference
leaving
being the
crewmate
Apollo
McDivitt
suits were all
behind
custom
to
made
witness
for
the
each crew
vastness
member.
of space alone, becoming the first American astronaut to complete a spacewalk.
0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
The only thing I wish is I had more.
The first steps on the lunar surface were performed by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin.
We had Ed White's
It was July
magnificent 20-minute quote walk in
and the world
space. And I don't think you'll ever get any better,
very far away.
any better film. It was space euphoria, I think, from everyone from Ed and Jim McDivitt to everyone on the ground, and mission control everybody. I mean, it was spectacular.
I guess in high school,
He had a little
staying
gun,
up
he
and
could
watching
control his
that,
body, he could
and
move
going out
where
and
he
looking
wanted
at
to
the moon
go.
and just marveling about
It set us up.
there.
As time
I think we were all captivated when Neil Armstrong did the ultimate spacewalk, which was to actually go out of his vehicle and end up walking on the surface of another body in our solar system.
Well, you know the difficulties that we had in the Gemini program doing spacewalks because the state of the art, the state of the art needs to improve.
And you move around.
You saw the difficulties there when you jump out and you try to get something done. Well, you haven't practiced in the free fall zero-G condition, and so it's Newton's second law. You push in something, it moves your body instead of getting the work done. And so that whole business, you see, we just evolved and we grew.
I was really personally impressed with the Apollo EVs and spacewalks. Can you imagine the first humans to ever walk another planetary body to the moon? So just fantastic. And you kind of see that 2-foot bunny hop. So we had great spacesuits. We kept the Apollo astronauts alive.
Once we got the lunar rover
the first
set up,
EVAs, the first spacewalks were not
we were
very,
ready to go
productive.
be lunar explorers.
The crew members got outside, they didn't have anything to hold on to, they kind of flailed around. They couldn't do fairly simple tasks.
Plastic fenders that,
and they learned from that they had to have a better way to train, and they started to use water tanks.
But the reason we had fenders on these things were because the lunar dust was one of the biggest problems we encountered on the surface of the moon. It was almost the texture of graphite. But graphite's a lubricant. This was just the opposite. It would get in and on everything. So I was walking, doing some work around the lunar rover, and I put my rock hammer in my pocket with the handle sticking out, and I caught it under one of those extensions of the fender and
the Gemini
blew it off.
Pretty much compare it to what
the launch entry suit and immersed us in all this stuff. So we had to figure out a way. We took 4 maps, 4 lunar geology maps, and taped them together, and took a couple light clamps and clamped them, and it did the job.
And at the knees.
And what do we tape them with?
The difference being the Apollo suits were all
we went from there into the Skylab program, and we went to the A7LB at that time. So Apollo, you know, so on the surface with an A7L, a spacesuit, and we do have a 6th of the gravity, and we do have the life support system on the back, which is taking care of all our physiology, the cooling, the oxygen, removing the carbon dioxide, and all the rest of that. In the Skylab program, we were on an umbilical. The umbilical provided all of the physiology, if you will. The umbilical between the spacewalker and the Skylab space station provided all
I do remember
the life
the first landing on the moon, Apollo 11.
When we went into the shuttle program, we went back
in high school,
riding a
staying up
backpack.
and watching that.
But the big
going out and looking at the moon, just marveling about their people up there.
Was that
I think we were all captivated when Neil Armstrong did the ultimate spacewalk.
We integrated
to actually
the
go out of the
with
vehicle and end up walking on the surface of another body in our solar system.
The hoses around and connect.
You have a mass.
In the shuttle program, we integrated the heart, upper torso, and the life support system. But importantly to us then was we did away with the zipper.
Kind of think
that is zipper work.
Direction.
And I had taken the zipper to a vacuum many times. The zipper starts here, and it rolls around, and it rolls up the back. And the zipper is maybe 3 feet long.
I was really
and it is
personally impressed with the Apollo EVs and spacewalks. Can you imagine the first humans to ever walk another planetary body to the moon? So just fantastic. And you kind of see that too. The habitat was getting very, very hot. So we had great the astronauts had to go outside in their spacesuits, perform the extravehicular activity, and they literally saved Skylab.
We were ready to go.
Without EVA, Skylab would have not been habitable. When they had to deploy the solar array, they had to deploy the thermal canopy over the damaged area. So EVA saved that.
When it was folded up, we had to unfold and they slid down.
Another great example from the Gamma Ray Observatory mission. Jerry Ross and Jay App went out and literally got an antenna deployed, and it saved a major observatory. So really important interaction when humans are suited and kind of saving very large missions.
My first
it would get in and on
initial training program.
So I was walking, doing some work around a little over my rock hammer in my pocket.
In fact,
with the handle sticking out. I caught it under one of those extensions of the fender and boom, blew it off. The dust would have come right over the top and immersed us in all this stuff. So we had to figure out a way. We took 4 maps, 4 lunar geology maps, and taped them together and took a couple light clamps and
figure out what tools we had available to them to test out and operate.
And what do we tape them with? Duct tape.
We went from there into the Skylab program, and we went to the A7LB. I had run it through Apollo, also on the floor of the A7L, the 1G test. I spaced through vacuum test, a 6 of the gravity. I had run it through, and we do have the life support number of cycles, which is taking care of all our physiology, moving the carbon dioxide,
from
and all the
that,
rest
we
of
started to develop
in the Skylab program, we were on an
backpack that we demonstrated on several flights and used
all
in some
of the physiology.
In dramatic fashion,
the umbilical between the spacewalker and the Skylab space station provided all the life support. When we went into the shuttle program, we went back to riding a backpack
on subsequent missions.
But the big difference between the shuttle and the Apollo was that
when he had a backpack and
we integrated the backpack with the suit itself. So Apollo was you wear the backpack there.
Over the following years, extravehicular activity became one of the space traveler's most exciting and necessary tools.
The heart of the torso and the life support system. But importantly to us then was we did away with the
cosmonaut Svetlana Savitskaya broke the proverbial glass ceiling and became the first woman to walk in space.
To a vacuum many times.
Catherine Sullivan followed shortly after on October 11th, becoming the first female American astronaut to perform a spacewalk.
And the zipper is maybe 3 feet long. And it is a zipper. And a zipper is the only thing between you and eternity.
Spacewalking has actually saved some of our programs. So we can look at Skylab, which Skylab, the habitat was getting very, very hot, and the astronauts had to go outside in their spacesuits, perform the extravehicular activity, and they literally saved Skylab.
Without EVA, Skylab would have not been habitable. You know, they had to deploy the solar array, they had to deploy the thermal canopy over the damaged area. So EVA saved the mission completely.
Another great example from the Gamma Ray Observatory mission. Jerry Ross and Jay Apt went out and literally got an antenna deployed at your observatory. So really important interaction when humans are suited and kind of saving very large missions.
My first job in the astronaut office after my initial training program was completed was to start working on EVAs, or spacewalks, and the equipment. And in fact, we worked with the early crews to design what their spacewalks would be like. STS-5 was the first planned spacewalk, and they had equipment malfunctions which prohibited them from going outside. And then STS-6 was the first one where we actually conducted some spacewalks. So I worked with those crews, helping them to figure out what tools we had available to them that they could test out and operate in the vacuum of space out in the payload bay of the orbiter. And then we progressed from there.
The suit was not a brand new suit anymore. I had run it through all on the floor. That's the 1G test. I had run it through vacuum testing. I had run it through certification, where the number of cycles you put on all the joints. I've been in the water with it, so it was a friend.
From that, then we started to develop things like the manned maneuvering unit, the little rocket backpack that we demonstrated on several flights and used in some cases.
In dramatic fashion, doing the first fully untethered spacewalk, Bruce McCandless zoomed about in the manned maneuvering unit.
First chance I had to stick my head out the hatch on our EVA on day 7.
On subsequent missions years later, so did the need for advanced technology and utilities.
Bruce McCandless.
Complicated missions and space program saving maneuvers are the essence of NASA's extravehicular activity.
There was one time when I was on the mechanical arm that was on the Hubble
Over the following years,
and I was being moved from one place to another, and you really have no sensation of movement when you're on that arm. It's just so smooth. There's no drag of the water pulling you back, and so you don't really know you're moving.
As cosmonaut
and I was working on the tools, I was putting the sockets on for the next, whatever task I had to do next, and the guys stopped it. And they said, you have to look at this, you just have to stop and look. And so I stopped and looked, and we were over the Gulf of Mexico. You could see the entire of North America. And we could see Aurora up over Canada.
This is the
just an amazing
first chance I had to stick my head out the hatch on our EVA on day 7.
Little power
As time
tools.
progressed,
We developed more wrenches and other kinds of tools that we could use for other types of failures that we identified in the payload bay door mechanisms to remove debris or to disconnect things should they not function properly.
And I was being moved from one place to another, and you really have no sensation of movement when you're on that arm. It's just so smooth. There's no drag of the water pulling you back, and so you don't really know you're moving.
On board the spacecraft, you get the today 2 spacewalk crew members who go out, work cooperatively together. They become brother and sister, brother and brother, sister and sister. They learn how to work as a very coherent team. They actually understand each other's moves. They know where they're supposed to be. You've got nowadays a robotic operator who's generally moving one.
We developed more wrenches and other kinds of tools that we could use for other types of failures that we identified in the payload bay door mechanisms to remove debris or to disconnect things should they not function properly.
From the Apollo program's deep space missions around and to the moon, to the U.S. Skylab, Shuttle, and International Space Station programs, spacewalkers have suited up.
On board the spacecraft, you've got today 2 spacewalk crew members who go out, work cooperatively together. They become brother and sister, brother and brother, sister and sister. They learn how to work as a very coherent team. They actually understand each other's moves. They know where they're supposed to be. You've got nowadays a robotic operator who's generally moving at least one of the crew members around on a robotic arm. You've got the IV crew member, the intervehicular crew member, who is, for all intents and purposes, the choreographer, has the whole mission kind of committed to memory, knows when somebody's out of position, knows when somebody's about to get too far away where they can be safely tethered. Back on Earth, in the Mission Control Center, you have the primary person on console that is the EV or the extravehicular controller. In the back room, they probably have anywhere from 25 to 100 people who are looking at data from each of the spacewalking astronauts. They're looking at data from the spacewalk that's actually going on. And then somewhere in the world, like at a place that built the spacesuit, or somebody that designed the procedure that's being done, whether it's in Denver, Colorado, or Connecticut, they're also looking on, and they have their own data that they're evaluating and getting all that back into mission control in Houston, telling the flight control team, okay, we see this developing or we see this happening, you need to let the crew know. So probably thousands of people supporting the development of the types of spacewalks that we're going to do, and then hundreds actually involved in the spacewalk on that particular day.
It was part of our training to make sure that, you know, even though you might be nervous, try not to show them that you're nervous. Everything had to be laid out perfectly, you know. I mean, from the start, you know, you had your checklist. It was all laid out properly. You know which pocket every pin went in, you know, even down to where the pocket they want their sandwich put in.
It has been the astronauts' mantra to train, test, and succeed.
One of the things that astronauts learn to do to look at a situation and don't panic about anything, you'll make it worse, but think carefully. Did you do something wrong? And then fix it.
Well, the astronaut prayer, which is, please God, don't let me screw this up. That's the first thing.
I think the biggest fear that I had, and maybe many astronauts as well, is not that I was going to get hurt, it's that I was going to mess up. Because everybody's watching. You have such a limited time out there to get done what needs to be done, and you really, really don't want to make a mistake.
It was cold. So that was a little surprise, but we should have anticipated cold. But it turns out at that point we had only done hot spacewalks. Until STS-6, they had all been warm.
The STS-125 crew, which was the final Hubble servicing mission, that almost none of us thought they would be able to successfully complete 5 back-to-back-to-back-to-back-to-back EVAs and do all that they were supposed to do. And they not only completed them in spite of obstacles at every turn on almost every single EVA, but they did them superbly and left Hubble in incredible shape. And I think they did a tremendous service to planetary science, astrophysics, and just the field of spacewalks in terms of showing people that if you really work hard at it and you plan it and you execute the way you plan, there's nothing we can't do.
When you're doing a spacewalk on orbit, you're in your own spaceship. It's your spacesuit, but it keeps you from the vacuum outside and your crewmates inside the space shuttle. I had one moment on the Hubble Space Telescope mission where Drew Feustel, my spacewalking partner, was on the other side of the telescope, and I was holding onto a handrail looking up at the Earth go by behind the Hubble. And it was a truly remarkable moment, but I did realize, you know, how far away we were from the Earth's atmosphere, from our homes, from our companions inside the space shuttle. And I wouldn't say that I felt a sense of loneliness, but a sense of awe, you know, that we're doing these kind of things, that we're able to fix the Hubble, to orbit the Earth.
Through spacewalks, complex problems have been solved in extreme ways, such as fixing the Hubble Space Telescope's blurry vision, turning a possible billion-dollar piece of space junk into one of the most revered scientific instruments of human history. Missions like Hubble tested the mettle of spacewalkers, an elite breed among an already out-of-this-world group of adventurers.
Say that on Hubble, it's a very fine motor skill, tuned in, very close in, a lot of hands work. So it's almost like doing surgery when you're on Hubble in a suit versus being a longshoreman when you're on space station, or you're just hanging, moving big blivets around and you're changing stuff out.
And that tradition continued with the Wall of EVAs, which built the tremendously successful International Space Station.
It's been 50 years since NASA's first EVA, when Ed White went out on Gemini 4. We've come a long way since that first one. Building the International Space Station, it was very, very EVA intensive. And when we were planning for it, everybody talked about the wall of EVA. We're never going to be able to accomplish all this. And when you look back on what we accomplished, it was pretty darn amazing.
So on my first flight, we were right in the middle of the construction of the space station. So of course, every shuttle flight that went up was just together.
every single EVA was an important and necessary component of the assembly sequence. So I think we all feel that, you know, we had a hand in laying the keystone, or however you want to describe it.
To see the ISS now and the spacewalks that they do to go out and do repairs, I mean, it's just incredible.
Station is more than 14 years old, built by spacewalkers, and continues to be maintained and upgraded through spacewalks in the most advanced spacesuits the world has ever seen.
Spacewalks are not, they look like they're incredible fun, and they probably are for the crew member when you really get down to it, but we must never forget how dangerous they are.
Today, the International Space Station is being used as a proving ground to conduct the research and test the technologies that will take humans beyond low Earth orbit and deeper into the solar system than ever before, to the area around the Moon, to an asteroid, and on to Mars. We will pioneer space, not just to visit, but to stay.
We're going to migrate out over the next 5 to 10 years into repositioning humanity in lunar orbit. So we will spend most of our time orbiting the Moon and doing more technology development, but learning basically how we operate in a low gravity or no gravity environment, because that's the way it will be when we go to Mars. Mars's gravity is less than Earth's. Operating there will be significantly different than operating here in low Earth orbit. When we do the asteroid redirect mission and we reposition an asteroid into a stable retrograde orbit around the Moon, then the dominant gravity for that group of explorers, if you will, is going to be the asteroid itself. And that's going to be a very, very, very low gravity field, if any at all. So we've got a lot of development of tactics, techniques, and procedures.
Never know when you build a piece of hardware, the guys back in the 70s and gals that built and designed and tested the original EMUs, which we're still flying today, by the way. The life support systems are still the original life support systems that we had 30-some years ago. You never know where that hardware is going to end up.
To see that suit, you know, to see it go on over the decades and into we never planned on hundreds of spacewalks. And the key thing there is in structural integrity is you identify weakness before failure.
From here, NASA engineers, technicians, and astronauts will figure out new ways to overcome the next set of challenges.
We decided to orbit the Earth a lot instead of going deeper into space, and now I think it's time for us to take that step beyond orbiting the Earth and moving on. We don't have the same momentum we had when we had an enemy that we were afraid of. So we are not in competition as much as I think we need to be in cooperation with other nations in order to move all of us forward and out into space.
Mars is really extreme, which is the great part about it. It's challenging. So when we get to Mars, you're going to need to be provided your life support and pressure with a spacesuit, but something new in terms of to be very lightweight, be very mobile. We don't really have a locomotion suit. We have spacesuits for the vacuum of microgravity. So you're weightless, which is great, but that's a very different environment. Now when we get to Mars, we have gravity, 3/8 gravity, so we're bipedal again. So we're going to be walking, bending, or going there to search for life, looking for fossils and digging things up. So you really are an explorer. So it is akin to Lewis and Clark expedition and exploring and moving out into the west. It's really the next frontier.
For anyone who goes on another EVA stroll back on the Moon or on Mars, and we'll do both one day, I know that'll happen, take duct tape.
We are currently further along than ever before in human history on our journey to Mars. American engineers and scientists around the country are working hard to develop the technologies, including new spacesuits, that astronauts will use to one day live and work on the Red Planet. Next stop, Mars.
Hi, I'm Alex Matrix, a software developer at Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. This is Rocket Science in 60 Seconds. The avionics are the brains behind the Space Launch System rocket. They are the computers and electrical systems that fly, track, guide, and steer the vehicle throughout its launch and flight. The avionics make the rocket fly by guiding and directing all of its thrust power. The rocket launches in boosters, and with the help of its brains. We present the flight computers with thousands of scenarios to detect all different types of faults and still make sure the vehicle flies safely. You can't run that many tests on actual hardware, so these scenarios are very valuable. Using the software that I helped write, I get to watch the SLS rocket launch nearly every day. The only thing that could rival it is the actual Artemis mission to the moon.
Consider major aeronautical revolutions. A few may come to mind. For example, the first flight at Kitty Hawk, or breaking the sound barrier at Edwards Air Force Base, or perhaps the massive buildup that led to humans leaving Earth to explore other planetary bodies. While these achievements are extraordinary, one key aeronautical revolution that is often overlooked is the standardization of commercial flights into the National Airspace, or NAS. It may seem simple enough, and often not widely understood by the flying public, but our national airspace infrastructure is huge. It comprises the navigation facilities and airports of the United States, and all the services, rules, regulations, policies, procedures, personnel, and equipment. Every day, more than 44,000 flights safely take off and land here in the U.S., totaling more than 16 million flights per year. This process is seamless to most of us, due to the dedication of millions of professionals who work to provide safe flights in and out of the national airspace. When a complex system this big works so seamlessly, great care must be taken when new advancements are added into it. Over the years, there have been incremental changes to the system, but one major advancement that is happening now is the integration of unmanned aircraft systems into the national airspace. That may sound innocuous enough, but updating our current national airspace to include millions of unmanned aircraft is a Herculean task that has required years of research, study, and countless hours of design and analysis to move this task forward. This integration needs to be seamless, keeping the flying public safe while also allowing new vehicles to perform their assigned tasks. On this episode of NASA X, we'll follow researchers from NASA and industry to better understand how unmanned aircraft systems will be integrated into the National Airspace System. We will also shadow a unique flight test that joins pilots, engineers, and researchers together to help establish standards for piloted and unmanned aircraft flying in the NAS. Join us as we uncover this complex endeavor and find out what the future of flight looks in the flying public. On this cold morning in California's high desert, a group of researchers from NASA and from industry are preparing for another fact-finding flight using the Navmar Applied Sciences Tiger Shark XP. NASA Armstrong, located at Edwards Air Force Base, has seen many important test flights over the years. But this flight, and the others performed by this group, are being used as building blocks for research that is enabling a paradigm shift in flight as we know it. This round of testing, known as Flight Test Series 6, or FT6, is assisting the Federal Aviation Administration as they develop regulations to allow the integration of unmanned aircraft systems into the national airspace system.
The work that we're doing will contribute for others to come after us and know how to safely integrate this type of airplane into the national airspace. So a lot has gone on to integrate manned airplane into, so the same level of effort, or perhaps more, needs to go into integrating unmanned airplanes. There's different options on how you do that. There could be a pilot on the ground, which is what we're doing right now, or the airplane could be doing things on its own. Before you let the airplane go do things on its own, we would need to respond to those things. So the work that we're doing will eventually help get us there, whether we have a pilot on the ground either monitoring or actively controlling the unmanned airplane, or if the unmanned airplane can do something on its own, that whatever it does will be safe to the traffic around it and to the people under it.